has contributed to understanding the purpose of Quran, at least in my hypothesis, my submission that Quran's purpose is purely falah for human beings, and it can only be itself actualized when human beings have actually fully used it. And human beings could possibly only have fully used it, or can possibly ever fully use it, if they use reason. Epistemology is the term that I used yesterday. So, covering the concept of causes in relation with the purpose of Quran itself, I now wish to and intend to cover three more concepts. One is the concept of concepts itself, which is related, integrated with epistemology, with knowing, with reason. Because I did say that yesterday that the moment we start to think that we need to strive for understanding the purpose of Quran, then obviously the first question emerges is how. We need to have some kind of methodology, some kind of science. And I did say that there is already, it is contained within Quran. So I'm going to be using that ayat now in that. But just before concluding on the causes, I did say yesterday that it is also these four causes. Everything has a purpose. Every entity in the world, anything that Allah has created, has a purpose. And I did kind of, in passing, mention that inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. It's also this theory is kind of grounded into that statement of the Quran, and how Sufism has also kind of used this theory, or have this theory within their overall schematization. And so I could just perhaps cover that before going on to the next concept. So when we're talking about efficient cause coming from God, material cause in the matter that we exist, and formal cause, that is the very nature of any entity, and namely right now us as a human being, and Quran as the book, and final cause, that cause which the formal cause, when is fully utilized, I mean fulfilled, then the thing is utilized. So in that, uh, as human beings, we are coming from God, the efficient cause. Material cause, we have this body because we exist in matter. uh, Formal cause is our rationality, which actually comes down to using wisdom, intellection, to be able to live a good life, so live a moral life. And final cause is the completion, that we are returning back to God, having fulfilled our rationality, having fulfilled our duty of living a moral life and creating a just society. And that is basically from Allah, efficient cause, in Allah, existence, because we exist. This is in line with Wahdatul Wujud, that everything shared the existence. Through Allah, the what we understand of Allah with the attributes, those through our moral attributes, and back to Allah, having a lived, fulfilled life, and then returning to God. So this is a concept that has been used. So this theory actually explains things, and it systematically can explain the cause of anything. And I think this is something that, using reason, using logic, one ought to be exercising in making claims, or making claims of knowledge or belief, I suppose. So now we're talking about concepts, because the third concept that I said would be about the concepts. This is something that is very kind of something that we don't take it. It is something that is implicit within us, and we're all using logic all the time. We're all using concepts all the time. But I did say that if we want to understand the concept of Quran, we would need some kind of science and methodology. So I want to introduce a methodology here. Concepts, to go on to concepts, first of all, if I can just say that something in Quran very interestingly refers to the idea of concepts, and in fact human beings and their ability to think and reason. And this is the ayat in, I don't know the ayat and the surah and the ayat number right now, but it is the dialogue between angels and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah is asking for the angels to bow down to Adam, and Adam and Iblis rejects. So, first of all, I would like to also uh, bring a metaphor here. Uh, that, well, before bringing the metaphor, I just want to conclude what I'm saying, actually, which is that in that dialogue, then in the tafsirs that we hear, that Allah had taught Adam some names, and when he announce those names, the angels bow down. So these names, I think this is also, we can take from here that it is a kind of a allusion to the idea of human beings, that human beings are the only species that we know who are defined and characterized and featured as some a species that can think of concepts and then communicate them, using speech and being able to think about them. So I think this is quite a profound ayat in Quran that kind of alludes to what is our capacity and what is our uh, essential nature of us, and this is what we are, other than the material aspects of us, which we share with many other species in the world, in the cosmos, in the universe, but mainly the ability to think of concepts. Now, when I'm talking about concepts here, and I want to uh, sorry, there's a call coming. Yeah. Yeah. So these concepts, we are now. This is just the background to how we understand. So another thing that I would like to say about concepts: that we are human beings, and when we have any experience. Right now, I'm having an experience. You are on the other side of my screen. I'm on this side. I know the room is here. I know the curtains, table, everything is here, and it's all unified into my mind in one experience. It is not separate. It is not disjointed. So the idea is the way that we're structured. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has structured our mind is such that we are able to experience reality outside us, external to us, and of course internal to us as well. And it's a one unified experience. We are able to make concepts out of it, of what's going on right now. So I have a concept right now, what's going on. I'm here on the, you know, sharing some ideas with you on the phone. So there are concepts that are running along in my head and my head pattern. So, and then of course I'm able to combine them all, and I'm able to kind of deliberate on my next thought or next what I wanted to say. So this is something that human beings have through that rationality, and the reason I was talking about epistemology yesterday was to link it here, that we are structured in a way that when we receive experience from outside, we are able to make quick concepts, and more than often we want to use them to our benefit, and that comes into the justice side of thing or injustice side of thing. But this is human beings, that they're able to make concept and being able to articulate them and speak about them. The concepts which are universal, for example, when we're looking into Quran, and Quran is invariably is speaking about the ultimate truth, the absolute truth. So, if you like, the thought, perfect thought of how human beings can live. So, it is a language of truth. It is trying to align us. So, for us to understand that concept of perfection, we are able to do that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kind of disposed within us the ideas. So, these ideas are kind of already built in. So when we are exposed or encountered with these ideas, we can we can kind of intuitively feel them. We can understand what justice is, even if we haven't been, you know, have not been able to be just in our lives to the extent that we can understand what justice is. So these are the concepts. So in understanding concept, it's very important that in Quran we understand the concept, what is underpinning the whole narrative. And that's why I was trying to insist yesterday, in just in my own humble opinion, that the whole concept of Quran is morality, in a sense that it's bringing order within us as human beings, and then spreading, magnifying that order within society, and making a good social community, and uh, be with others with justice. So I will not go very much into in the concepts, maybe at another time, if there'd be any opportunity. But I wanted to just like say that concepts are universal, in a sense that the language of Quran is completely universal. It is not confined to, bound by language. It is not bound by any specific um, race, any nation, any community. It's absolutely universal, and it's that universality universality that anybody, any human being who use reason is able to grasp it. So again, just reiterating my point that the if the concept of Quran is the purpose of Quran is to establish social justice, then the concepts we should try to understand concepts within that umbrella of what it is trying to drive to. So any statement, for example, any statement, any proposition, if I were to make, um, I can apply in epistemology, it's called virtue epistemology, which is like I can apply wisdom in understanding that concept. Then, more than likely, I will try to produce knowledge which is worthy of knowledge. Because what happens is that, which we talked yesterday, and the ayat, of course, in the beginning part of the ayat are those who are not, they have been reproached for not using their faculties of reason. So often they are succumb to their desiring self, and in that they are unable to kind of detach themselves from their self-interest. So in any experience, we are, uh, you know, by default looking for our own interest. And then we have a lot of associations of loyalty. So when these two things comes, they impair our understanding to read something. So if I read a statement or even a verse in Quran, I would more likely to read it from my own perspective. And if I am heavily influenced by some kind of um, uh, influenced by a specific perspective, then I will read it through that lens. So basically, in understanding concept, Quran has given the most profound um, uh, mechanism of reaching epistemology, which has not been kind of explored in Islamic intellectual tradition. I just, and of course, it is from Quran, so it's not something that in the Western intellectual tradition, but there is something that is very um, mirroring the very concept. But Quran says, I don't have the ayat. I'm sorry. I will get it out and give it to you. Have it later on in our conversation. But the ayat goes that we will show them in the horizon and within their own selves that this is the truth or God is the truth. So now here, if we understand with this ayat, it's so profound that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is saying that within himself, within oneself, he has the faculties to understand the truth, but he has to do introspection, and he has to do introspection fairly and justly. And this introspection, I would like to share an example of that. As this introspection is about taking any proposition and then removing anything which is contradicting between what is said and what you're believing. So, taking Surah Balad, in ayat number 17, it goes, while they are, while they are, while they are the ones who have faith and uh, enjoins other exhort one another to patience and compassion. Now, if I'm honest with myself, and I would like to be, and the idea is to illustrate how this ayat of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala can lead us to reach closer to the truth. So, if I were to read this ayat, in a plain reading, I would read that, and those who would free slaves, and I would think, oh yeah, I would do that, or those who give charity and look after, and you can always position yourself, yeah, I have a soft heart, and Allah has put enough compassion in me, I can do that. But soon as the ayat goes, and those who have faith, I might just, think that, okay, I have faith because I am a believer, I'm a Muslim, which I would kind of question that, we need to understand the concept of faith as well in itself. But the moment I will read then who persevere and exhort others to persevere and to be patient and compassion. Now I really have to understand at this point, I really have to be honest with myself. Have I got that patience? Do I understand the concept of patience? Do I really understand what patience in its totality is patience being you know um, in the way that we exercise patience, or the patience that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is alluding here is a totally different degree. And I have to be honest, uh, you know, uh, most of us, if not all of us, are are triggered by this egoistic psychology, and all human beings are not just. Sorry, I have to take this. What it's called. Um, there are certain psychological factors and biological factors that deter us from being patient, and a slight bruise on our ego, and out goes all the thinking mechanism. So this ayat, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I think is extremely profound, and I would very much like to explore this at maybe another time. And I am myself, um, you know, may Allah give me tawfiq. So I'm trying to explore this ayat myself of how to systematically introduce this as the foundation for epistemology, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that they will know within themselves. So I think if you look at the whole idea and mechanism of reason or intellection or intellect or whatever you call it, wisdom, the faculties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, or the instrument, main instrument, which in Islamic narrative we call heart rather than the brain, that which receives knowledge by intuition, which receives knowledge by being encountering similar um, events in a way that it just kind of it takes in the universal feature of that thing. So you remember we were talking about that anything has an essential nature, which is the true nature. So our hearts are designed in a way by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can receive, we can absorb the meaning in something. So again, all this what I'm trying to say is just to draw the point that when we're reading Quran, our focus should be and independently and invariably should be focused on what moral messages are there. Sometimes we're looking at terms that we don't know. So if I go back and say that the dialogue between Allah and Adam, now if I were to ask you that Adam, this whole depiction that Allah is symbolically explaining to us is to understand a message, is to understand the symbolic metaphor behind it. Otherwise, if we were to believe that there is no time and there is no space in the realm of beyond this physical world, then not it would not make sense to even imagine Adam and uh, angels and God in any physical form, of course, because there is no such thing as that outside time and space. We can't think. It's like if I were to ask you, you can close your eyes and imagine we are talking in time and space. You will, without time and space, you will not be able to do that because your mind cannot think outside time and space. So the idea behind was that when terms comes that we cannot verify them, it is not that we need to understand um, the term and we go into the term to try and get a literal imagery out of that term, but we need to kind of make it coherent with using wisdom. We need to make it coherent that if it fits the overall language of Quran, which is moral language, completely moral language. If it doesn't fit, then obviously that's not the only criteria, but I'm just saying it's one of the criteria that we should try to adopt to. Uh, you asked me a question yesterday about the liver, and Dr. Essen kind of helped us with that as well. And uh, again, that term that you use, I mean, the metaphor about the pain was again, if I may just like kind of revisit that question, that is was trying to emphasize the struggle, the hardship that can be caused from such a pain that human beings are, born with and born in and live through it. So rather than if you're looking at the medical aspects of it, it still remains under the domain of morality. That there is a metaphoric um, illustration of how man is under extreme pain. So this language, what I'm trying to say, that it falls all under the domain of morality. So that's one thing. And of course, I started the conversation. I started this talk yesterday from putting that as a premise that the world we see is full of injustices, and we haven't taken and we haven't absorbed and we haven't reflected upon Quran on its total message, as I just explained to you in that example, that when I read that ayat or Surah Balad, I probably will not exclude myself. I think I'm able to do that. But if I just delve in a bit more, and if I just be more honest to myself, I know I'm not patient. I know human beings are not patient. If they were patient, world would be a very different place, but it's not, you know. And I think self-examination is enough for all of us to see throughout the day how many times we lose our temper with our with people that we live, the person that we spend the most time, our spouses, and us for them, you know, because this is where we're spending most time, so we are tested the most, and we know how many times we are just losing our temper, and um, and how we are manipulating the situation to you know to our interest. So this is one more concept that I think that hopefully is somehow uh, connected with the other two, which is of course the purpose of Quran, and and reason, and uh, the causes, not sorry, not the causes, the concepts, the purpose, and reason. Now, I would like to move on to another concept of, well, I would like to definitely integrating these with justice. That what is it that we understand from justice? So, staying, you know, keeping it very brief, because we hear the term justice, and if you ask somebody what you know what justice is, somebody would say that you know something that is not right, that is not fair. But to make it more relevant to our lives, why the society is the way it is. I mean, oh, you know, it's justice is the total sum of Quran. You know, the Islam that we are to submit to the will of God, to justice, and yet this word we need to, I suppose, be more internalized with this word, internalize this word within us, so that we understand how many places we're not just. So, not going into many different um, angles and areas of justice. I'm just trying to keep it very simple to human behavior and human lives. Now, justice can be defined as something that may be in a contradiction or contrary to it. Is injustice can be defined as, you know, when we are we are wanting something that perhaps we don't deserve. We are always wanting more of a proportion that we deserve, and we are wishing others less of that proportion that we deserve. And something that we uh, uh, don't want, something that causes suffering, we don't want for us. Doesn't matter if it goes and shifted on to others. I think this is something that I would not go into examples, because I am, like I said, that we all can do self-examination, that how we are trying to you know, implicitly as human beings striving for our own benefit. I mean, the very trivial examples that I often share are like, you know, when you're on the road, there's only one parking, you are not bothered if somebody else can, you know, have a right or not, but you want to be able to get that parking. If you're in a restaurant, there's only one table, you're with your family, you'd want to be the first one in the queue, not the last one, you know, and why, so on and so forth. If you just like look, you know, just look in and analyze and examine our lives throughout the day, we are kind of wanting a more share for ourselves, for our family, and it's very implicit, and we are not aware of it. So this is because of this there are injustice in the world, because this injustice, more portion, less portion, more portion of benefit, less portion of misery, it it runs across the spectrum when it comes to our, sorry, hello, uh Irshad, did you say something?
No,
Irshad?
no, please carry on.
Okay, all right, okay, my apologies. So I think uh, this is one aspect that fits into the ayat. When we open the ayat, inshallah ta'ala, I'm doubtful today, but inshallah tomorrow. So we need to bring the aspect that the world is the way it is because there are the injustices, is because we all, by our self raw nature, have self-interest in everything that we do as human beings, and it goes right across into you know, it's not limited to your material desires. It's intellectual desires, is you know, it's proving a point desire, you know, having a self-righteousness aspect. So all aspect, you know, when you want power, when you want a dominance, that runs across religious institute as well. They are not just, you know, economic uh, um, sectors and spheres or social. So it's it's a psychological aspect of human beings, and I think that during this talk, what I'm trying to say that also in the backdrop that our politics is the way it is in the world is because of the way our sociology is, and our sociology is the way in the world is because of our psychology and our psychology is very much is the way it is how our biology is. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has invariably mentioned in the Quran that He is, I mentioned one yesterday, I'm going to repeat it that, man is born greedy, man is hasty, man is um, in the love of wealth or in the love of wealth of anything. Wealth can be intellectual, wealth can be material, wealth can be power, anything. He becomes violent. And this is clearly the case in the dawn of civilization. So we can understand that man has, this is a psychological problem because it's a biological problem. And Allah hasn't kind of, in his narrative, it's there. But he's also disposed within us the seed that can sprout into a cultivated, a refined human being that can elevate. So he's obviously put his breath into us with all those attributes that we can live by. But the fact is that man is still at loss is because man hasn't taken all those, uh, haven't taken those aspects of his life, of his psychology, hasn't understood his biology. Biologically, man is he survives. His will to survive. So if you take all the, you've seen what happened when COVID happens, and when there was a food shortage, that everybody wanted to go and fill their houses. I'm sure included me maybe at that time, but we all wanted to just think for ourselves. So suddenly our altruism was already flattened because we weren't in the luxury of you know able to afford the life that we were affording, and similar examples. If it had gone a bit worse thing could have happened because it's like human biology, and which constitute the human psychology. And psychology and biology is based on mathematics, but I'm not going to go into this um, um, uh, explanation here. But I just wanted to say that psychology, to understand psychology, is extremely important. Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam have said, he who knows himself knows his Lord. So unless we know our psychology, unless we understanding psychology, we'll explore our biology, and we need to just kind of progress into this, and to be able to you know to do something to improve the conditions of life of society. And I think that's what reflection, I would suggest, that is in Quran, to improve the conditions of oneself and society. uh, I am now going to just move on to another profound concept of freedom, because I think all these uh, topics that I have, not topics, but the terms that I have selected are all, inshallah ta'ala, will aid and help me, and help me helping you understand what I have in mind when we're going through this ayat together, inshallah, tomorrow. So the concept of freedom, what is freedom? Um, and of course, is very much grounded in this ayat, the actual concept of freedom, because how we understand freedom is when you have removed the obstacles from ahead of us, and we can do whatever we wish, whatever we want. But that is freedom for sure. That is the freedom of your physical body, that everything has been, all the constraints have been taken, not only your physical body, your free will to use that, but the freedom that Islam and the mission of Islam and the mission of Prophet, peace be upon him, is being propagated and being professed. It's very much into this ayah. And that freedom is that as human beings, we are governed by, and this is some philosophical text that I'm using, of course, just to illustrate a point, that we as human beings are, governed by this uh, pleasure and pain. So we're always looking for something that increase our utility. Whatever we want to increase that. Whatever we don't like or whatever cause suffering, we try to minimize this. So this is something that is very inbuilt, very innate, very not innate, but very kind of intrinsic to human biology, that we all want the best for us, and we all want to avoid the suffering. And I think it's very much true, which I've in one of my paper I have actually written that as well. That in uh, rewards and punishment, and in Islam, the idea that we're trying to just like maximize something that benefits us and minimize something that causes us suffering. Now, the idea of freedom here is we all, as human beings, uh, thinking of freedom as taking away everything from something that what we desire. So if I desire something and something is obstructing, I would want that obstruction to be removed so that I can pursue for what I'm trying to get. Now, the idea of freedom in Islam is such that you are in your body and physical world. You are governed by the laws of physical laws of nature, which is like when you're hungry, you want to eat. When you want something, you want to pursue, you want to gratify, you want to satisfy your gratifications, your desires all the time. And this again runs through the whole spectrum, from material things to intellectual things to religious things, because you want. And there is an urge within you that is telling you that you want to do this because it's um, without going very deep. So if I'm not being able to articulate, I do apologize. You can put that in the question. What I'm trying to say that freedom is to be able to transcend the physical laws of nature that makes us do what we do. And what I am suggesting and submitting, that most of our actions are driven out of this want of doing something, that we want to do this. I want to prove a point to you. I want this and I want that, and you want or she want. We all. So whether it's religious, whether it's anything, it's usually it's emerging out of this wanting. So freedom in Islam is that which transcends this physical laws of nature. Sorry, Shah, there's someone speaking. That is there uh, something that I'm supposed to take note of? Okay, okay, yeah, okay. So this freedom is Irshad, that when we are, what I depicted before, that we are uh, biologically and psychologically looking for our self-interest. That means all our pursuits are to to produce a utility for us, whether they're religious utility, whether they are material utility, whether they are, you know, any types of utility. And we can go through a list, so on and so forth. But we are trying to create utility, and freedom is to, and in doing so, we are using ourselves and using other human beings as our means. So if I want to, let's say I just take this example, just I want to prove a point, and you've said something, and I want to prove that no, my point is right. So if my intention, and more than often all our intentions, because of our ego, are kind of are triggered by that kind of motivation. And I'm not making this criticism, because I'm actually, I'm taking my example. I'm just talking generally as the consciousness of humanity, uh, so long they're at loss. And I'm included. I'm not outside, I'm not excluded. But when we are kind of using ourselves, so let's say I have an argument with my missus, and I'm trying to prove a point. And through that concepts, universal concepts, I know at some point that I'm wrong. But it's my ego is bruised if I were to accept, and I would continue, and then I would manipulate myself. I would manipulate the situation to to kind of convince that I'm right. Now, here, I don't have patience. I'm unable to persevere with patience, and I'm using myself, and I'm using my wife, because I'm having that argument with her. So, freedom is liberation from these desires. Uh, that something makes you an instrument rather than you're the author. And freedom in Islam is within the dignity of human being, and that dignity is because insan is Ashraful Makhlukat. And the quality of Ashraful Makhlukat is he has been given that dignity because he is able or she is able to release themselves from the physical laws of nature like other animals and other species cannot do. And this is again is very corollary with the what I said before, that man is able to understand concepts and communicate them. So it's all very coherent. If you look from, if you try to join the knots, you will see that the purpose, the reason, the instrument, they're all very tightly integrated. And freedom is a key to it, because without this freedom you are unable to do anything. What we have mentioned before is, i.e., to understand the purpose, i.e., to use the instrument to understand the purpose, because you are unable to use your reason and wisdom if you are driven all the time by the urges and impulses of yourself. You know so freedom is to be free from all this, and that you don't use yourself and you don't use others, but you respect others, that they have the ability as well, and they share that ability as with you. That dignity they share with you is purely based and grounded on the fact that you and other human beings are able to transcend the mechanism of using themselves and using others. So imagine this kind of freedom. uh, how the world would be if it was. And because human beings are more prone to succumb to their desires, then this freedom is extremely difficult to achieve. And if I may just give an example of Hazrat Hur in Karbala, he has shown that he could have used, himself, he could have used others as a means to what would have been his son or his own life, but he nothing stopped him to respect himself. In respecting himself, he could not use himself, i.e., to try and save his life, or i.e., to try and save his son's life. And I'm just talking about Hazrat Hur. I'm not talking about the progeny of Prophet, peace be upon him. So he was liberated against what we say that, majority Muslims, they all were justifying one or another reason to evade uh, facing the truth and justice and stand up for it. So that this is the freedom that can avail somebody what Hazrat Hur availed. And if you are not familiar with this kind of freedom, then again there's a lot of introspection needed, and of course is needed to make this society a better world, because one is not separable from the other. This freedom, if there is no freedom like this, there is no morality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is um, promoting and compelling us and guiding us with. So this freedom is very intrinsic. I think I'm not sure with your timing, Arshad, that we started a bit late, but um, I can still just do, yeah. Okay, okay, okay. So basically, uh, I think that maybe if we can uh, end the discussion here, after I hope that I have been able to articulate the concept of freedom that I have in mind, and I'm sure that we're all uh, acquainted with it. But I just wanted to uh, explain this through a kind of a methodology, a kind of a science or system. So, for example, this. And to be honest, some of these ideas are profound ideas by profound philosophers, and I think it'd be plagiarism not to attribute to them. So these are all kind of philosophical ideas, but they all converge to one reality, and just the the systematic aspect, the methodological aspect of these ideas is something that can remain in our minds, so that we can kind of uh, solidify the ideas, the concepts. So, for example, for freedom, uh, the philosophical theory goes that do not use yourself or others as a means, but only as an end in themselves. So basically, this just summarizes the whole thing. That if I were to use myself, whether at work, whether at anywhere else, and I'm trying to benefit myself, and I'm manipulating the situation and others for, as a means to my end, then the world will be where it is. If I can free myself from these constraints, physical laws of nature, then surely I will respect other human beings and I will respect myself. And that would be the uh, that would that would be a moral position to take. But that moral position cannot and will not come except this freedom that I must, develop within me. Ishad, I will, inshallah, hopefully that, the one concept of faith, which is again very brief, but I think I will try make my efforts to open that within the ayat tomorrow. So with that, I will thank you and thank everyone um, for listening to this talk. Yeah. What is the theme of Quran? Uh, I would say that just basically I'm just reiterating that the theme of Quran is that human being become successful and achieve falah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding human beings constantly, invariably through Quran by stories, by mentioning what happened to people before, what happened, what can happen to people were they to not use the faculties they've been given, and misery will be their fate. And people who have purified their nafses have succeeded. So it's really a theme of consciousness, and that's what I was trying to say yesterday, that Quran and men are similar and very close in a sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has breathed into humans his spirit, and just the whole the attributes that he has disposed within us are the attributes as the narrative of the Quran that is calling people towards goodness. It's all about goodness and uh, showing the wishes and uh, the opposite of goodness in the Quran, and it kind of depicting it through from the beginning to the end, that how these two and gradationally in between, how many darajats, grades are there, and what we ought to be doing is to be successful, which is to make our dynamic movement towards the higher morality that Quran is constantly inspiring us towards. And to the extent that he's saying man is at loss, again, I will say that man is at loss by means he's not saying some people are at loss. He's saying man means biologically he's created in that way, but his guidance through what is contained within Quran is his success, his falah, and that is completely in line with what Prophet peace be upon him said, that I was not sent but to perfect morality. So the mission of Prophet excludes all other missions and supersede this mission as the most highest elevated mission, that I have come to perfect moral traits, i.e., those moral traits that can enable us to be among those in the ayat that Allah is calling us towards, that those who persevere, those who have patience, those who have compassion. And you know that because of the limitations of our biological makeup, we invariably and always falling succumb to the lower side of us. I'm not being very pessimistic. I'm just saying that, this is true that we haven't self examined. Otherwise, society, I mean, we all know that we're a different place. You and I have often conversations in which, we're talking about our local issues and how they are. They are not addressed because of complacency, because of people's deliberations not there, because they have not been kind of given the significance that they deserve and need. Yes, I hope that is, yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Ability. Absolutely, absolutely. I think this is the most profound verse, and among all profound verses of the Quran. But this goes right at the heart of epistemology of what human being is, i.e., that Allah has given great potentials, not just potential. This is not something that you use as a secondary. This is the very you. This is the very you-ness that Allah has given you, the consciousness and the ability to discern between right and wrong. And Irshad, I mean, we haven't explored so many things in our life, but when you we can grasp energies of people sometimes when you meet someone, and you know there's a um, certain tone in meeting someone that you can just kind of grasp. The heart is very easily able to grasp reality, what's going outside and what's going inside. And this is what I was trying to explain or share with you when I was trying to say that ayat that Allah is saying that He will show within ourselves, i.e., that we have this faculty at our disposal all the time. But because we have a lot of biases, because we have the self-interested nature, mentality, combined with biases, it it distorts our uh, it distorts our ability to see. Because the moment, you know, yes, 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 yes. Yes, especially of the biases, Shad, because this is the point that I think that we can, and we can every day we can see that how people are. If something is being said, something for someone to them or someone they're close to or their closer circle or their closer association, then instantly they would take a side. As it's called the in um, uh, in membership kind of, sorry, it's escaping my mind. In group mentality and out group mentality. So anything that has been said, you will see it from your perspective. And this is again another problem that human beings are aware of it. On any uh, political or religious spectrum, you see that there are people on the left and you see the people on the right, and extreme left and extreme right, and in the middle. And yet we are not sure if this is because of external conditions that they are like this, or because of internal conditions they are like this. But there is huge polarization between people's thinking. But that diversity is fine, and Allah has kind of said that I have created things in diversity. But the fact is that they're all able to use the apparatus of morality to be able to distinguish between right and wrong. All of us, we know that. And this is built within us. Yeah. Uh, okay. So the freedom that I have discussed today, it's not the freedom that requires limitation. I think that the person who's asking has another kind of freedom in mind, i.e., the freedom that is given to citizens in any society. um, I think there is a conflation between that freedom and the freedom that I'm trying to say that I was trying to share. Because the freedom I'm trying to share is the one that when you transcend from the physical laws of nature and you're able to respect yourself and others, and you you are you are your higher self. You are your ability to live a good life. So that freedom does not have limitations. But I'm sure if that question can be put in more clarity, I will happily answer. Sorry. But Should we not, uh, sorry, rely on the tafsir of Al-Bath? Yeah, so so the thing is that the most important thing, I think, and which is, I think, of extreme importance, I'm very happy this question has been raised and put. Uh, if you don't understand concepts, clarity, we are we will not be in a position to understand the essentials of that message. So if I were to say something, and if the Alibat, the teachings and the narrations that they have left with us, those also need to be deciphered and understand contextually, independent from biases, independent from religious influence, independent from uh, other interests that human beings have, and frankly we have. So that infallibility is not passed on. So obviously we ought to be striving with our best efforts to try and understand, because what if we are assuming that Quran is universal, then there would be nothing in the narrations of our Ahlul Bayt that would be contradicting that. And for us to be able to understand the message of Quran in that, I think we need to make those efforts to understand the concepts. And what my belief is that the moment that we understand the concepts clearly, they couldn't be any different than what Ahlul Bayt has left with us, if we can understand the concepts in clarity. Because Quran is trying to.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum, Ali.
How are you, Doctor? Inshallah, then go.
I'm Alhamdulillah, I'm well, Ali.
Alhamdulillah. I just wanted to play a bit of devil's advocate. I just want to propose a question that someone may argue that the Quran is it's an axiom, so it's self-evident. So whatever is there or includes there, it's objective. So us trying to use for example, methodology or our epistemology is going to be relatively subjective. So thus, can someone argue that we can use the tafsir of the Ahlul Bayt and not really play about it? Because of course, as you mentioned, there can be some biases. And yeah, so that's my question.
Yeah, so thank you, Ali. That's a very good question, I think, and it's an important question because it brings another important reinforcement of what I said. So when I cited the ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we will show them in the horizons and within their own selves that this is the truth. So when he's talking, when he is indicating the featuring that as truth, then is an objective reality, and we are able within the way our minds are structured, we are able to align ourselves with that objectivity. So the fact that we are unable to be objective and more than often we fall into subjectivity is purely because we haven't taken epistemology as it should be. And the criteria that I try to explain is that you remove all your biases, you remove all your self-interests, you remove all your cultural biases, your all type of biases, and you put yourself completely unveiled from anything and uninfluenced by anything, and then you take a proposition, and if that proposition doesn't make sense, you remove and you continue with that exercise until you come to the truth. So if I can just quickly repeat my example, that when I read Al-Balad, Surah Al-Balad, then I think that no, it's not me, I'm not the patient one, I'm not the compassionate one. Then what the next thing I do? Oh, so I haven't taken this ayat, i.e. I haven't fulfilled my purpose as a Muslim following this Quran. Then I would have to take that. I will remove any contradiction that I have, that I've been living a fulfilled life as a believer. I'm not. Then I have to take into the next step will be through that axiom, will be my conclusion that if I have done that, that means that I haven't fulfilled the purpose of Quran because I haven't actualized it. Yes, I haven't. Then that means that I have really not submitted to the haqq in Islam. Yes, I haven't. So it's going to bring me to the position of humility, and then I can reconstruct under the understanding of those objective values that Quran is aspiring towards and inspiring us towards. I hope that answers your question, Ali.
Yeah, of course, it's a long discussion, but thank you so much again, Doctor.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your question. Thank you, Irshad. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Khuda Hafiz.